You step into an elevator, press your floor button, and almost instinctively, you glance at the mirror. Maybe you fix your hair, adjust your tie, check your teeth, or just stare at your own reflection for a few seconds until the doors open again. It feels completely natural, like the mirror has always belonged there, like it's as essential to the elevator as the buttons or the doors themselves. But have you ever stopped to wonder why it's there in the first place? Elevators are small, enclosed metal boxes designed to move people between floors. They don't need mirrors to function. A mirror doesn't make the ride faster, smoother, or more energy efficient. It doesn't contribute to the mechanical operation of the cabin, the cables, or the counterweight system. Yet almost every modern elevator you step into has one. It turns out, the mirror on the elevator wall isn't really about vanity at all. Its presence solves problems most people never even realize they have, and its origins reveal something fascinating about human psychology, architecture, accessibility, and the invisible design decisions that shape our everyday experiences. To understand why mirrors ended up in elevators, we need to go back to one of the oldest and most persistent complaints in building design: waiting. In the mid-20th century, as cities expanded upward and buildings grew taller, elevators became essential infrastructure. No longer a luxury or novelty, they were the arteries of modern architecture, carrying thousands of people every day through offices, apartments, hospitals, and hotels. But as reliance on elevators increased, so did frustration. Building managers started receiving a flood of complaints from tenants, workers, and visitors. People said the elevators were too slow. They were tired of standing around, staring at blank walls, waiting for the doors to open. Engineers took the complaints seriously. They studied the mechanical systems, optimized the motors, upgraded the pulley mechanisms, recalculated the stopping algorithms, and yet the complaints kept coming. The elevators weren't actually slow. The machinery was performing within its designed parameters. People just felt like they were slow. And that feeling turned out to be the real problem. Standing in a small, featureless box with nothing to do made every second feel longer than it actually was. Time perception, as psychologists have long understood, is deeply influenced by how occupied your mind is. When you have nothing to look at, nothing to interact with, and nothing to think about, your brain focuses entirely on the passage of time, and that focus makes it drag painfully. It's the same reason a watched pot never seems to boil, or a minute of silence feels like an eternity. Building managers and consultants needed a way to distract people without adding complex, expensive, or high-maintenance entertainment systems. They considered music, which did help in some cases and led to the birth of what we now call elevator music. But they also tried something far simpler and far cheaper. They put a mirror inside the elevator. The moment mirrors were installed, the complaints dropped dramatically. People began checking their appearance, adjusting their clothes, watching other passengers in the reflection, or simply gazing at the expanded visual space the mirror created. Their minds were occupied, even if only slightly, and that small distraction was enough to change their entire perception of the ride. The elevator didn't move any faster. The wait between floors didn't shrink by a single second. But people stopped noticing. This psychological trick worked so well and so consistently that it became standard practice in elevator design worldwide. It's one of the most elegant examples in modern architecture of solving a behavioral problem not with engineering, but with psychology. Instead of making the machine faster, designers made the human experience better, and that turned out to be far more effective. But the mirror does more than just distract. It also addresses a deeply rooted and very common human discomfort: claustrophobia. Elevators are among the smallest fully enclosed spaces that most people regularly enter. Unlike a small room or a narrow hallway, an elevator seals you in completely. The doors close, the walls are tight, the ceiling is low, and for a brief period you have no control over when you get out. For individuals who are sensitive to tight spaces, and studies suggest that a significant percentage of the population experiences at least mild claustrophobic tendencies, this experience can trigger anxiety, unease, rapid heartbeat, or even panic. A mirror directly counteracts this by creating the illusion of depth. By reflecting the interior of the cabin, it visually doubles the perceived size of the space, making the elevator feel larger, more open, and less confining than it actually is. This optical trick is the same reason interior designers place mirrors in small apartments, narrow hallways, and compact restaurants. The brain processes the reflected image as additional physical space, even though, logically, you know it's just a reflection. In an elevator, this subtle visual expansion can be the difference between a comfortable ride and one filled with quiet dread. There's another critical reason mirrors are placed in elevators, one that most people never consider, but that profoundly affects millions of lives around the world. Mirrors make elevators accessible for wheelchair users. When a person in a wheelchair enters an elevator, they typically roll in facing forward and end up facing the back wall, because the limited floor space doesn't allow for easy turning, especially in smaller cabins. Without a mirror on the back wall, they would have no way to see the doors behind them, the floor indicator above the doors, or who might be entering or exiting the cabin at each stop. They would essentially be riding blind, dependent on others to tell them when they've reached their floor or when it's safe to exit. A mirror on the back wall solves this entirely. It gives wheelchair users a clear, unobstructed view of the doors, the floor display, and the activity behind them without needing to perform a difficult or impossible turn. This isn't just a convenience or a nice design touch, it's a matter of independence, dignity, and safety. In many countries, including the United States, the European Union, Japan, and Australia, accessibility laws and building codes now explicitly require mirrors in elevators for this exact reason. What most able-bodied passengers see as a decorative or cosmetic feature is, for people with mobility challenges, an essential tool for navigating public spaces with autonomy. Mirrors in elevators also play a subtle but surprisingly important role in shaping social behavior. This is where psychology gets even more interesting. When people can see themselves, they tend to become more self-aware and more self-conscious about their actions. This phenomenon has been studied extensively in social psychology. Researchers have found that the mere presence of a mirror or a reflective surface makes individuals more likely to behave in socially acceptable ways. People are more polite, more restrained, more considerate of personal space, and less likely to engage in antisocial actions when they can observe their own behavior in real time. In the close and often uncomfortable quarters of an elevator, where complete strangers stand inches apart in shared silence. This effect is quietly powerful. It helps maintain a sense of order, civility, and mutual respect in a space where tension could easily arise. It's harder to act aggressively, make rude gestures, or behave inappropriately when you're literally watching yourself do it. Building managers, security professionals, and even criminologists have long understood this principle. Mirrors and reflective surfaces are used in retail stores to reduce shoplifting, in public restrooms to discourage vandalism, and in parking garages to improve safety. The elevator mirror is part of this same tradition of using self-awareness as a tool for better behavior. There's also a security dimension that often goes unnoticed. A mirror, especially one positioned at the back or along the sides of the elevator, allows passengers to see who is standing behind them or in their blind spots without having to turn around. This can provide a sense of safety, particularly for individuals riding alone late at night or in unfamiliar buildings. Being able to observe the entire cabin at a glance, even through a reflection, gives passengers more awareness and more control over their environment. Some modern elevator designs use convex mirrors or angled panels specifically to eliminate blind corners and maximize visibility within the cabin. This isn't about paranoia. It's about creating an environment where people feel secure enough to use the elevator without hesitation. From a design and maintenance perspective, mirrors also serve several practical purposes that architects and builders appreciate. They make the elevator interior feel brighter by reflecting existing light sources, effectively amplifying the illumination within the cabin without requiring additional fixtures or higher energy consumption. They are relatively easy to clean and maintain compared to other decorative wall treatments, and they add a sense of quality, polish, and finish to the cabin's appearance. Without a mirror, an elevator interior can feel stark, industrial, and uninviting. With one, the same space feels intentional, refined, and even elegant. Architects and interior designers use mirrors not just for their functional benefits, but as a tool to elevate the aesthetic experience of a space that would otherwise feel purely utilitarian. In luxury buildings, hotels, and corporate offices, the elevator mirror is often one of the first design details that communicates a sense of care and attention to visitors. It's also worth noting that the effectiveness of the elevator mirror reveals something deeper about human nature. We are visual creatures. Our brains are wired to process visual information constantly, and when deprived of stimulation, we become restless, anxious, and acutely aware of discomfort. The mirror exploits this wiring in the most benign way possible. It gives our eyes something to do, our minds something to process, and our sense of spatial awareness something to hold on to. It's such a simple intervention that it seems almost too obvious, and yet it took decades of complaints and experimentation before it became standard. The lesson here is that the best design solutions are often not the most complex or expensive ones. They're the ones that understand people. So the next time you step into an elevator and catch your reflection staring back at you, know that the mirror isn't there by accident. It's not there just so you can check your hair or straighten your collar, although you're welcome to do that too. It's there because decades ago someone realized that the biggest problem with elevators wasn't mechanical. It was human. People needed something to occupy their minds during a ride that felt longer than it was. They needed something to ease the discomfort of standing in a sealed metal box. They needed something to help those who navigate the world from a wheelchair see what's happening behind them. And they needed something to quietly encourage better behavior in a space where strangers share uncomfortably close quarters. That single pane of glass, mounted on a wall, solves all of these problems at once, without batteries, without software, without moving parts, and without most people ever realizing it's doing anything at all. It's a reminder that sometimes the most effective solutions aren't complex feats of engineering or cutting-edge technology. They're simple, thoughtful responses to how people actually think, feel, and experience the world around them. And that might be the most powerful design principle of all. Thank you for watching. If you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution.